Death is the oldest companion we pretend not to know. It waits at the periphery of our days, polite, patient, unblinking. Most of us spend a lifetime averting our gaze from that quiet figure. But David Bowie, ever the contrarian patron saint of reinvention, he did something different. He invited death in, not as an enemy, not even as an inevitability, but as a collaborator, a co-writer, one final creative partner. In the waning years of his life, Bowie turned toward mortality with a kind of lucid courage rare amongst public figures. He did not offer confession, nor retreat into the mystique. Rather, he performed, a gesture that scholars like Philip Auslander remind us is never secondary for Bowie, but intrinsic to how he thought, felt, and how he became. He made his farewell not as a statement, but as a work of art, intricate, coded, and mythic. This is not simply a story about grief, nor merely a posthumous reading of Blackstar, though the album opens itself to such readings with startling generosity. It is a meditation instead on how an artist, one who spent his life dissolving identities just as quickly as he made them, chose to face that final dissolution. From Ziggy Stardust apocalyptic glamour, to the Thin White Duke's brittle detachment, to the haunted spectral calm of Blackstar, death has always been whispering in Bowie's margins. Each persona was a rehearsal for departure. Each transformation gestured toward the fragile temporality of the self, echoing Judith Butler's warning that identity is always a doing, never a becoming, or a being. And in that final doing, Blackstar, Bowie does not turn away. He leans in. He sings into the abyss, and incredibly so, the abyss begins to harmonize. Blackstar is at once requiem, riddle, and resurrection, a cryptic star map of a man writing himself out of the world. The music shimmers with estrangement, dissonant jazz chords, rhythms that feel like the body slipping out of sync with time, saxophone lines that break into metallic sobs. Yet beneath all this is a fierce vitality, what Simon Reynolds once called Bowie's futuristic melancholy, a longing for not what has been lost, but for what remains possible even at the threshold of extinction. This video essay, this script, this meditation, is an attempt to walk with Bowie as he dances with death, to trace how mortality shaped his art, how Blackstar became a conscious act of legacy, and how art itself becomes a kind of afterlife and immortality. We begin here, at the edge of the final star.
A man stands a solitary candle. In the center of it all. In the center of it all.
David Bowie's relationship with death began long before his terminal diagnosis. It shadows the early 1970s work, flickers through the late Berlin years, and resurfaces in moments so small you can blink and miss them. Listen to Rock and Roll Suicide. Hear the desperation laced into 5 years, or watch The Man Who Fell to Earth, where Bowie's alien is less extraterrestrial than spiritually displaced. Mortality is not merely a theme here, it is an atmosphere. The Thin White Duke, in particular, stands as Bowie's most explicit engagement with finitude, a figure carved out of cocaine and Nietzschean dread, suspended between immortality fantasies and bodily collapse. Scholars like Nicholas Pegg have noted that the Duke is less persona than a portrait of Bowie's psychic fragmentation during this period. Even Bowie later admitted he had lost control, that the Duke began wearing him during this time. Performance theorists have long argued that persona work allows artists to stage existential questions in embodied form. Butler calls it the citational structure of identity. Auslander suggests Bowie turned the stage into a philosophical laboratory. Bowie himself, in interviews, likened his identities to masks one wears, not to conceal, but to reveal in a different way. Death, then, was woven into the very architecture of Bowie's creativity. And so we understand, Blackstar is not a sudden eruption of mortality, but a culmination. When Bowie entered the studio in 2014, he carried a secret, a diagnosis that had already began to sculpt the contours of his remaining time on Earth. Only a small circle knew. Tony Visconti, his lifelong collaborator, understood almost immediately that these would be Bowie's last songs. And yet the sessions were not shrouded in despair. Musicians describe Bowie as joyful, playful, and sharply attentive. To give shape to his final vision, Bowie brought on Donnie McCaslin and a cadre of avant-garde jazz musicians from New York's experimental scene. The result is a sonic palette unlike anything in his catalog. Angular, restless, unbound by the limitations of genre. It recalls the late style of classical composers, what Edward Said said as contrapuntal, dissonant, unresolved. Art made by those who sense the end approaching and refuse to the comfort of closure. Blackstar is Bowie's late-style work, not in the nostalgic mode of older rock legends, but in the radical, shimmering fragmentation of an artist still moving forward. Lazarus stands as one of the great meditations on mortality in modern music. Look up here, I'm in heaven, a lyric that feels both literal and theatrical. Bowie is not confessing, he is performing transcendence, performing departure, and yet the vulnerability is unmistakable. Girl Loves Me, with its fractured language drawn from Polari and Nadsat, stages the breakdown of meaning that accompanies the body's decline. When death approaches, language falters. In Blackstar, the title track, he constructs a cosmology of his own disappearance. Stars burn, collapse, and rebirth themselves. Bowie becomes myth and dust simultaneously. This is not just an album, it is a coded manuscript, a final text.
On the day of execution, only women kneel and smile.
Blackstar is dense with symbols, cosmic, religious, occultic, and theatrical. Bowie had always trafficked in myth, but here myth becomes framework, scaffolding, and shroud. Scholars have read the album through numerous lenses. There's Barth's Death of the Author. Bowie literalizes the metaphor. He writes a work meant to survive him in every sense possible. There's Judith Butler's performativity. The dying body becomes a site of performance, not deception. There's Munoz's queer futurity. Bowie pushes his art beyond the limits of the present moment, toward a future he knows he will not live to see. And then there's Adorno's theory of late style. The fractures, dissonant intervals, and abrupt shifts embody what Adorno calls intransigence, the refusal to resolve. Musically, death is embedded in the structure. Time signatures slip, harmonies refuse to settle, the saxophone lines wander like someone walking through a dream they know to be ending. In the Blackstar video, the dead astronaut, the blindfolded Bowie, the ritual dancers, all of it evokes the cyclical nature of myth. Bowie's body becomes symbolic material, vulnerable, luminous, half entombed, half transfigured. He stages his own disappearance, and in doing so, makes it communal. He invites us into his ritual. What does it mean for an artist to choreograph their own death? There's an agency to it. There's a dignity, and an unsettling kind of generosity. Bowie's farewell is not confessional in the way culture expects. He did not publish revelations or memoirs. Instead, he made art. He constructed what Auslander would call a performative exit, a final gesture that collapses the distinction between celebrity and personhood. He transforms his illness into a grammar of images: the blindfold, the levitation, the manic writing, the closet into which he retreats at the end of the song Lazarus. This is not resignation, it's authorship. Performance scholars note that Bowie's final work exemplifies the aestheticization of mortality, the way art can make death not only beautiful, but legible. Bowie allows his audience to witness his departure without being voyeurs of his suffering. He gives us one final myth, not a final breakdown.
Oh, we can be heroes just for one day.
The album Blackstar was released on January 8th, 2016, Bowie's 69th birthday. He would die 2 days later. The world received the album as revelation. Each lyric, each visual motif, each sonic fracture suddenly snapped into prolific focus. Critics and fans alike spoke of awe, devastation, gratitude. Scholars immediately began parsing its symbolic density, calling Blackstar a death album, a cosmic farewell, and a self-elegy. But the deeper truth is that Bowie gave us a blueprint for how an artist might die without disappearing. He transformed the old narratives of celebrity death, of accident, of overdose, decline, into something more intentional, almost liturgical in nature. He created a space for grief that did not collapse into sentimentality, and he fused his own passing into his life's work in a way critics compare to Frida Kahlo, Glenn Gould, or even Yeats. Blackstar is not simply the end of Bowie's story. It is a completion of an arc that stretches back to Ziggy's fall to Earth in the very beginning. Identity is fluid, time is finite, art is the bridge. To reflect on Bowie's confrontation with death is to encounter a profound lesson in how to be mortal without being diminished. He shows us that death need not be hidden, that identity is temporary, that the body will fail us, but meaning does not have to. Blackstar stands as a testament to art's capacity to hold what cannot be spoken: fear, courage, surrender, and astonishment. In the end, Bowie did not run from death. He invited it into a dance. And in that dance, he showed us how to face our own. Not with despair, but with creativity, with intention, with a strange, luminous grace. Death is inevitable, of course. But Bowie teaches us that how we meet it, how we perform it, how we sculpt meaning from death, can be an act of extraordinary beauty.